What's up guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today I have some more Tearlament deck profiles. It's been a while since I talked about tiers, and of course it's been not anywhere relevant in the meta since the new Forbidden list. The Tearlaments struggle in largely part due to Tearlament Arise Heart. It's going to be very hard for tiers to keep up as long as that card is a constant threat in the game. So these decks I'm going to show you may not fully be able to compete at the top tier level yet, but they might as soon as Cush tier kind of falls out of favor or gets hit, or maybe even with some more work these decks can compete. As far as other matchups go for the tier deck and other stuff, it fares pretty well. I feel like for trap decks, the infinite loop ability of the tiers and Pearl Rhino's ability to pop make a lot of those matchups actually pretty favorable, and there's a lot of just good interactions the tier has. So I do think that tier can be at least a decent rogue option if it's refined perfectly. Once Cush tier falls out of meta, then tier can really rise back to where it should be at the top. Let me show you guys the decks. Okay, so recipe number one. This is just Tearlament Sprite with nimble monsters. So one of the biggest interactions I think hasn't been explored enough with tiers, but has been explored a little bit, is Nimble Angler. How good it is with Sharon, or just milling it off of any of your other Tearlament effects. Summoning 2 level 2s from the deck off of it. Those bodies can be used for link summoning. It can be used for making gigantic and going into sprite plays, or just fusion material for guarding Chimera. Also thins the deck, meaning that it's more likely to mill your Tearlaments later in the game, especially it's more important now as they are limited. You do need to play some utility cards in here, otherwise this deck will just kind of get thrashed by Cush tier, and that's kind of the biggest issue with Tearlaments right now. But yeah, this kind of builds upon that combo I showed about a couple weeks ago, where you have Nimble Beaver plus Fenrir can do the gigantic Manning Cat thing where you ability lock them and you search the sprite cards. And then you can also build upon that further to play on hand traps with the tier stuff, summoning the Grapha. Guarding Chimera helps going second. Pearl Rhino helps with back row a lot. And the tier cards can kind of just put up interrupts as well. So this deck is probably the most fun of the three versions, at least from my opinion, because it kind of can go ham the most. It has the least utility cards out of all three options, so maybe it's the worst as far as the meta choice goes. You want to take the pieces that work and the ideas that kind of work for you, apply them to your own decks or mix them together, because frankly when I come up with a lot of these ideas, I don't have the time or ability to test them all, so it's just pure theory, and even then it's not extremely well fleshed out. So if you guys want to take the idea and build and develop upon it, you can make something better. This is by no means a final perfected list, whether it be ratios or tech cards. Just looking for ideas that work and then either taking them out and putting them on something else or building upon it. That's something to keep in mind whenever you look at a deck list, not just here. That's something that I use to kind of go from event to event as each event passes. Goddess I think is nice as well. I have it in a bunch of my tier decks because it outs Dragoon pretty easily, especially if you're putting up a lot of free bodies with Nimble Angler. And I'm liking IP a lot right now in this deck because obviously Underworld's a card, but making sprint on your opponent's turn is nice as well, because you can make a Stapelia or a Rakalos, Kaleidoheart, Grapha, depending on the version and what the setup you have. And then if you have the planet, you also get a pop, so that's very, very strong as far as interrupts go. And then IP is obviously a very low commitment play. The things I'd like to do here, maybe if you're not playing Lingaribos, because the card, if Ibly kind of gets phased out in the meta, or it's not happening enough to you, then you could potentially play more Links or XYZs to take advantage of the fact that if you resolve something like Angler, you can swarm the field very fast, so maybe stuff that helps going second is needed. I'm not playing Garura in here because it just never feels like that's the fusion I want to make, and you don't have that many Dark Aquas to use with. And yeah, I mean the Cush tier cards are here because I feel like it just works well with Chimera to help play through fields, and it sets up these plays pretty well. So remember the combo showed you where it's just a body plus Beaver, Fenrir's that body oftentimes. I felt like the Draco Sack into Cherubini play was cool, but in the end it felt super inefficient and low value, so I've decided to omit it from all of these lists for now. Next list. This is kind of building upon the idea I had before with the nimble stuff, but it's taking a very different approach to the point where I've debated taking out this half of this altogether. Now you still have this synergy with the Nimble Beaver. Instead of fusing it away with something polymerization in your hand, you were instead discarding it for arena cards more often, and then getting Fountain and you special from the deck still and do similar stuff with Gigantic or Sprint. In this version, you very often will go Sprint and then use the Hugin to make Stapelia, and then you can use the Sprint for Gigantic, get summon a Jet, add a Smashers, and then make another IP, and then IP make another Sprint. And then you sprint again, make a second Stapelia, and that's super easy. So something along those lines can happen pretty often, which is why I'm playing 2 sprints in here. I'm playing a heavy Runic Engine because you want the draws, they're pretty good. Something to note is the Destrudo's in here. That's because the freshly unbanned Ancient Fairy Dragon card is nice. You can destroy field spell, add different ones, so you can cycle between your fountain or your planet. So I'm playing 2 planets here. because oftentimes I get to Destrudo or have Ancient or Ash Blossom plus like Gary, and that gets me to Planet. And I'm not playing like a heavy tier engine, so I don't like need to see Planet, especially because it means oftentimes playing over Fountain, which isn't always optimal. But being able to swap between the two and access the engines a lot more easier is great. And it's nice because like if you have like 2 runic cards, you go like activate runic card, you can discard Destrudo, add this, or add Fountain, Destrudo, make Ancient Fairy, not in the MZ obviously, and then you activate Fountain, you activate Runic Spell, summon Gary. You don't get that back, but that's fine. You draw 2, and then you pop the Runic Fountain, you go Pearl Rhino, and you can add Rhino Heart, and here you can special the Rhino Heart from Ancient Fairy Dragon's effect, or normal summon, it depends on the rest of your hand. You can send a tier name, probably like Sharon, especially if I don't play this, you want to save this in your deck. And then you can make, with the Hugin, you can make Stapelia, you can make Greedier with the last 2 monsters, and as people are playing a lot of spells and traps right now, this card is like really strong. And then you can make like an IP with you can make an IP as well somewhere if you want to, or they have the Ancient Fairy Dragon just sit there. Depends on the rest of your hand if you have extenders or not, but it, like, you have a lot of options and it's really cool. It plays very much like a runic deck, but it's like, it sometimes feels like Runic Sprite as well, especially because the tier engine is so light. Like it's like pretty much as heavy as the Nimble package, that it almost doesn't feel like a tier deck in the same way, but it does have some different plays than the actual bright runic deck. So it is similar though, and this is the one that I'm liking a lot the most, at least with test hands. This is the one that I'd be leaning towards. You have a lot of utility cards here, and then if your opponent's going Rise Heart Past to play around Nibiru and stuff, and you have a lot of punishes, you have Flashing Fire, you have Tip to get Flashing Fire, and even Freezing Curses is fine. Obviously if they have Goliath, then this is a lot worse, but these still work, and just having more answers in your deck for those fields is fantastic. Let's see what else to talk about here. I still have this here to out Dragoon. Chen Ying is similar. This one's a bit harder to summon because Destrudo levels don't line up that well with it, and honestly this card might get cut, but I wanted to summon just like big boss monster, and maybe this was stupid, but this is like probably going out, but sometimes I summon it and it's like nice. The reason I play Garura in this is that you often want to sprint for Merly, and if Merly gets stuck in your hand, you don't actually have a great way of getting rid of it. You don't like get Sharon as much, and you're not forcing the fuse, and most of the time you trigger a fusion, it's by a sprint. So with the Merly stuck there, unless you have a way to get to Planet to Sharon, it's kind of hard. So in this version I do play Garura, and that's because in this deck the way you're fusing is most of the time with Merly, and that's your disruption to fuse on your opponent's turn. When you draw sprint, it can kind of get stuck there. It still is kind of annoying to get it out. When you have Sharon or Rhino Heart or Planet, you want to have something to make to put back the Merly. Otherwise, if you trigger a Sharon, the only way to put back Merly is with a Rhino Heart to make Kaleido, which is not good. And then sometimes the draw of Garura is nice to see another runic card to get the cycle going again. But yeah, this card can be a bit annoying to get stuck in your hand. It'd be really nice if you could just play more of this and then less of the other ones, but hey, this one's limited as well. It is something that I thought maybe I'd consider for Peru, but I just don't have time to test it properly. And runic cards scare me in like untested decks, because I never know how truly important a battle phase is for a deck until I play it. And with having 0 physical games tested of this deck, I did not want to risk it. I want to give it on solo hands. But yeah, this deck feels cool. Give it a shot. It's not a full-on tier deck, but it's not full-on runic sprite deck either. One thing to note though is you can add some of the heavier sprite cards from last build, like blue, carrot, red even, and that can give you a little more depth as well with the sprite cards, and that's fine. But I don't want to take too much away from either the runic engine or the non-engine pieces here, because these still help. And then the last recipe I have for you guys is a punk. The pug tier, this is not something new. What's changed though with punks is in Filton Hypernova we obviously got Diabalantis. The Menacing Mantis is not a card that OCG has either, and if it's synchro summon, you can send Insect or Plant from your deck to the grave up to number non-tuners, so it's going to be 1 almost always. And then you can make itself or either plant or insect a tuner. What you can send off this in this deck is Fusion Parasite. And if you felt like King of the Swamp was a good card because you get to fuse anything you want, this is essentially that. It doesn't get poly, but it is searchable. And you don't have to play multiple, which is nice. And you just put it in the grave and good to go. You can fuse whatever you want. It has another effect. It's not really easy to, you can't really trigger in this deck, but it is cool if you could somehow get it off. It would have to be off Zombie Vampire, but that doesn't really happen that often because you're going to be dumping it off this before the Zombie Vampire setup. That's the theory, right? You can go like Zayamin, summon Diabalantis, send this, and Zombie Vampire, try hit tiers, graveyard effects, or summon other stuff, and that's kind of cool. Sulik, which is nice as well, gets you a search as well. The alternative route, which I don't have here, but it's in the side, is try to do something with Bishbalkin. I haven't elaborated upon how this combo really works. Giving your opponent 5 tokens is funky. I want to have a way to clear it up, and I haven't really developed the idea, but something that could have potential. Maybe Ultimate Zalkin as well, but that one is typically not as powerful. That's just something like a new power tool or whatever that's broken. And Aggress, I'm not sure. Maybe Ancient Fairy Dragon with that even. It's an option. Zombie Vampire is your standard play here. Fortune Tune and Baguska and go into Zeus Lions because you have more here. I like Baron because you open up like a Foxy Tune plus Sulic. You can send the Sulic, add get to your cache, summon it, mill 3. It doesn't matter what you mill a lot of the time, and make Baron. And then if you added, and then like it's pretty easy if you have other like multiple punk cards, then still go through regular play. That's why I'm playing a heavier punk engine. I do want to see the punks pretty often, and having multiples lets you do plays like that. That's something I felt like I wanted because if there's a lot of skill drains in the format and I'm playing 6 Book of Moon type cards, then that's a good answer to that. If I can't force the planet. So you do have ways to force fusions, though sometimes it can be kind of annoying. With Oginance as well, as they can set up a Mudragon play, which is kind of nice. No Garura again here because it's not super important and I don't think it's worth the space. Black Rose plus Book of Moon, good versus skill drain, that's why it's in here as well. I figure that's maybe worth exploring. What I like about this version, and this is probably the version I've labbed the least, is that you have a lot of utility cards. Like I have Ash, Nibiru, Eclipse, Moon, Imperm. So you have 15 and then 16ish because this card is not really like engine. It's decent in some matchups and it can act as both. And sometimes you can use a cool interaction where you can like use this on their turn and then you can mill from your opponent's deck, not yours. And then that because they milled, you can use this. So it can be unswaped in that way. Like this card can be take out. I just thought I could beat a good discard off this. But yeah, so you can like play 15, 16 utility cards in here, maybe even 17 without Foolish because Foolish is again not like super important. And that's a lot of flexibility, and that might make it viable. Again, the tech cards that I do pick can change from format to format. They can change based on the meta game you're expecting. Main point being is those are the flex spots you have to work with, and you can decide whatever is the most appropriate. One idea that you could kind of build upon is maybe the runic deck you liked, but it doesn't have enough power, and then try and mix the two together and swap out like a bunch of the runic cards or these utility cards, like swap out the 17. It's places to explore. That's what I'm getting at. I'm giving you guys a bunch of different recipes that are not fully like tested. Let your imagination fly and have fun, because Tier really is one of the most open and creative decks I think is out there, and that's why I love it so much. Anyways, guys, those are the 3 recipes that I recommend you guys giving a shot and trying out. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any feedback, leave them in the comments below. If you have any other ideas for your Tearlament builds that I didn't go over, what archetypes or however you want to mix it together, shoot them in the comments as well. I'd love to see them. Maybe something is genius and I can explore it more. Also, please go sure to check out tsx1.com where you can use the code potato10 for 10% discount on all your sleeves from that website. Phenomenal sleeves. Those are the ones that I use at events, and I have absolutely no regrets. I've been enjoying them ever since I switched a couple months back, and you won't either. But I'll see you guys next time. Peace.